Hello everyone. Thank you for coming out here today. Yes, I just wanted to make a slight confession to everyone here. I think mine is one of the bare pink leads. Hear me out!
While I certainly wouldn't call her the greatest Cure lead ever, I still find her very entertaining and just don't agree with a lot of the criticisms piled on her. Most prominent of those being that she's a Mary Sue, to which I say,
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
yes, Mana might get a bit too much screen time, but I don't think it comes at a significant detriment to her teammates and the show at large. And I especially find it frustrating when she's blamed for plot developments that weren't necessarily her fault, like Makoto becoming more of a gag character.
As I mentioned last time, she wasn't supposed to join the team as early as she did, so the writers didn't really have anything for her to do afterwards.
So I think it's an inside joke they just decided to turn her into the caricature that fans of Kamen Rider had turned Kazuma Kenzaki into thanks to the many memes.
Now, of course, this is my own theory, so I could be completely wrong, but I do find it to be the funniest theory. Seriously, I love this character, but good gravy, Takayuki Tsubaki flubbed up his lines more than I do with these videos.
Anyway, back to Mana. A thing that should be remembered is that along with Kamen Rider, Precure has been borrowing aspects from its other tokusatsu brother, Super Sentai.
I mean, yeah, that kind of goes without saying when you have colorful multi-person teams who often fight antagonists who draw on abstract concepts.
But for the past few years, they've shared some eerily similar patterns. What I mean by this is that in the same year this aired, Juden Sentai Kyoryuger was airing.
And if you know your Sentai, you'll know that this show is also accused of having its own Mary, or in this case, Gary stew.
But again, I think people were overreacting, especially in comparison to some of Daigo's immediate successors.
Again, almost eerily similar patterns.
But yeah, both shows were the victims of the fact that their respective franchises were starting to shift a bit too much focus onto their lead characters, leaving the rest of their cast with less and less room for development. Both of these characters were viewed as the tipping points of this negative trend, the ones responsible for taking it too far, even though I don't think they really were that bad, and they're definitely nowhere near the worst.
By the way, I'm basing a lot of this off of stuff I learned from Dead Shinta's review of Kyoryuger. I think his Twitter can get a little bit too political, especially these days, but I'd be remiss if I didn't provide a proper citation to his work, which, for his sake, I hope gets re-uploaded after much of it got claimed by Toei. Oh boy, I'm next, aren't I?
Though a major contributing factor as to why there was a little more focus on the lead cure of this show may have been the head writer Ryota Yamaguchi. Last time I went over how he wrote for Sailor Moon Stars, but he also got some more work from Toei immediately following that.
Yep, he was a Sentai writer for a couple of years, working on Goku 5, Time Ranger, and the Versus movie between the two.
During that time, he was likely mentored by Yasuko Kobayashi, a longtime Sentai writer who does favor the Reds. As a result, Mana is written more like a traditional Kobayashi Red, which isn't a bad thing as Kobayashi managed to make it work, most of the time, as they're meant to act as idealized figureheads who guide their teammates, but also allow them space to grow on their own. Now, this doesn't really match up with the usual Precure model where everyone, Pink included, is supposed to be an everyday girl, hence why I think a lot of fans rejected Mana. But it's not a model without merit. As again, just like Kyoryuger being one of the best-selling and rated Sentai in recent years, this show managed to maintain some very above-average ratings and toy sales. Yeah, it wasn't to the heights of Smile or Heartcatch, but still better TV ratings than all that had preceded it, and until Hakuto came around, it was the only season in the past 5 years to break 9 billion yen in toy sale revenue. Yeah, it took until Hakuto's insane marketing campaign to overcome this season in revenue.
I'll bring up more of why I think Mana isn't a Mary Sue throughout the review, but for now, let's just cover episodes 13 to 25 of Heartthrobbing Precure. Okay, she doesn't come out if I use English translations.
Episode 13 opened with a business meeting that reminded us that Alice has a net worth greater than all of us combined. However, Alice's true passion clearly wasn't just sitting around with a bunch of old farts, but rather partaking in tea parties with a bunch of cute girls. Really, there's no contest. Still, that didn't detract from their mission as Precure to find Princess Marie-Ange. One minutely Makoto was able to provide was the fact that the princess really liked roses. And as it just so happened, Sebastian had a flyer for a contest where the prize was a rose. A rose that just so happened to be from Trump Kingdom and was clearly not native to our world, as yellow roses usually don't get that shiny.
So these rich folk find a new species of rose, and rather than handing it off to some scientists to study, they decide to give it away in a contest. Play the clip.
Screw the rules, I have money.
So they head to the contest grounds and their very blatant Sentai references, obviously they're referring to Akiba Ranger. There, they met the mysterious girl from the last episode. Believing that she might be Marie-Ange, they asked if she liked roses.
Rika, this just might be me, but I think that isn't the sort of reaction you should be having.
After all you've gone through, I'm pretty sure you should be a little wary of anyone who looks like they're cosplaying as a Hero Aka villain. The girl left after dropping a not-so-subtle hint of what faction she was from. At the contest, they ran into yet another weirdo, this time a walking stereotype.
Huh, so this is what happened to Elle after she casually swore at a kids show. Probably the only good thing to come out of party.
Actually, this was Reina, another rich girl and the owner of the garden. She was also entering the contest to win the rose, but her primary directive was to infuriate Alice. As you'd imagine, Reina and her lackeys tried everything to sabotage the Precure's efforts, but they always ended up finding ways of countering their tactics. Ultimately, Reina and Alice ended up as the finalists, with the last game being a round of tennis.
I can see the wheels turning, Light Yagami. I'm already in your head.
There's no way this tennis match will deepen our friendship. This is a token gesture.
Things were dead even, but Reina decided to pull one last and literally dirty move by covering the rest of the Precure in mud.
Quick question. Does this contest have, any sort of officiating?
It's one thing to miss all of Reina's previous antics, but she's admitting to assaulting the friends of her competitor right here. Are we supposed to assume that the judges are in her pocket because this is her garden? That might make sense, but they never established that.
This is unfortunately a Shoji Yonemura episode who does struggle with setup, but at least he gets the characters right.
Alice won the match and the contest, but of course there was still one more challenge to overcome this week. Yes, it was now Mamon's turn to become a really silly looking monster of the week. To be fair, she looked the least terrible of the three.
But since this is a comedy review...
Feed me Seymour. Feed me all night long.
Bio Mama managed to incapacitate everyone except for Alice because this is her episode and she needs the character development. And to her credit, she took full advantage, showing off how much she had changed since that day back in grade school. Back then, she was overprotective of the friends she had just made, but after getting to know them better, she realized that they can be codependent. They can physically and emotionally support her just as much as she does them. With all that in mind, her fists were now more focused than ever, and she could now truly protect people.
Well, I see someone's unfamiliar with Captain America, and Mashu, and Naofumi, and Goofy. Yeah, shields are kind of underrated.
But yeah, one good shield bash and a barrage of special attacks later, and Mammon was defeated. Thus, the Precure were able to secure the rose that at first didn't look like much until the baby ex machina worked her magic. And the episode ended with the proper introduction of the mystery girl named Regina, who just so happened to be King Selfishness's daughter.
Iffy playing aside, this was actually a good episode for developing Alice as a dish job and focused mostly on her. See where I'm going with this?
Episode 14 shifted focus onto a girl who in another universe was also a Yuri-obsessed rich girl. Early into her life, Rika decided to fulfill her blue cure stereotype and become a doctor. Thus, in current day, she was always trying to maintain top marks, but...
Jeez, Mana, thanks for the salt. These ships were kind of bland.
Though we'll have to sideline her for now, as Davy needed to exposit on the jewel they got from the last episode. It was one of the 5 royal crystals belonging to the Trump Kingdom's royal family.
So yeah, we were getting a good old-fashioned fetch quest for this part of the series. Just pray you guys don't have to do it twice.
Back to Rika and her turmoil, Mana learned something interesting from her future mother-in-law.
突然部屋から大きな声や物音が
Wow, she really is taking her Tachibana trade seriously. By the way, for anyone who's seen Blade, you can probably guess what reference I'm going to make by the end of this episode.
But yeah, her friends were concerned that these were all signs that she might become the cutest delinquent ever.
I want to keep this video monetized.
Surprise, surprise, it was nothing at all. Rika was just taking classes in Karta. And for those who haven't seen Shikai Furu, it's a game where players try to swipe up cards with poems written on them as the ref reads them out loud. The first player to collect all the cards on their side wins. Rika, through a certain set of circumstances, had gotten into the game mostly as a change of pace from all of her studying.
Very relatable. I got into Yu-Gi-Oh! When I got tired of studying all the damn time. I just wish this franchise wasn't associated with Konami anymore.
Still, Rika did eventually need to get back into her studies, so after just one more tournament where she could compete to challenge a champion known as the Queen of Karta, she was planning on quitting. As a side bonus, the Precure believed that a card tournament might provide some leads to the princess. They all helped Rika train for the tournament, which, for some reason, included running? Okay, I get building up stamina, but wouldn't just playing the game work too, as well as straighten her reflexes?
You guys know you don't always have to commit to the Rocky cliches. You could just do what Randy Marsh does.
Back with the villains, Regina was acting like a more realistic bright rich girl than the one from the last episode.
シュークリーム買ってきて。はぁ？そんなこと言ってるとパパにつけちゃうわよ。
Also, yet another great smug face for this season. Anyway, main takeaway from this scene was that Ira had already left to launch an attack. He went to the Karta tournament, where of course the Precure were. Gotta love that plot convenience. And obviously, the queen became the victim of the week, though I gotta say, I love the reason why she became the victim.
クイーンの私にふさわしいキングが現れないの？世の中の男が不甲斐ないせいで。
Few people realize this episode was guest written by Shinzo Abe.
And yet, in spite of what happened last time, Ira decided to use the beast mode again. This resulted in him not only looking like a rejected flower guardian, but also losing control due to the queen's prideful nature for the game. Thus, the fight of this episode became a game of Karta. Ira was winning until a little encouragement from her teammates gave Rika the push she needed.
I don't care that it didn't perfectly match with the scene. I apologize for nothing.
And with just that one card flip, they won the fight after Ma delivered the finishing blow. They rescued the queen, and I guess the tournament just proceeded. I hope they moved it to a different date because I'm pretty sure most of the participants would have been a little shell-shocked over the monster Karta. Rika earned the game with the queen, which she lost. Yeah, points for not copying out here, as Rika is a novice at the end of the day. Still, she did impress the queen enough that she gave Rika her old set of Karta cards. And of course, these became the next key to unlock the Chest of Harmony, the next Royal Crystal. And the episode ended with both of Rika's parents assuring her that it's okay to pursue things other than medicine.
And you can also tell her that Karta is a good way of improving her ability to study, as it improves her memorization and concentration.
But nope, I guess we're going with the bog standard. It's okay to pursue more than one dream message.
Well, okay, I'm sure messages like this will never throw off a Blue Cure's arc.
Continuing with this plastic toy gathering arc, next up was Makoto. She had landed the titular role in a Snow White movie.
Oh, please tell me she's replacing Margot Robbie.
Actually, the lady who was playing the queen does kind of look like Sigourney Weaver.
よろしくお願いします。
足引っ張らないでね。
And I'm pretty sure that's what the real Weaver is like. Anyway, Makoto had auditioned for the role, hoping to find more leads to the princess. It wasn't an easy task, as not only was she unable to concentrate on the role due to all of her concerns regarding the princess, but as previously established, Weaver was pretty demanding. Now, that's not to say she was wrong to demand more of her co-star. In fact, it was clear that Makoto was putting too much on her plate, as she was also doing night patrols for the princess.
As much of a gag character as she did become after episode 10, we should never forget that Makoto is a dedicated knight.
Problem is that while trying to fulfill those commitments, she got even more piled on in the process.
What I really like about the series is how it shows that while being selfless is an amiable goal, it's also a very self-defeating lifestyle, and you do need to figure out what your priorities are.
Luckily, Makoto got some balance thanks to her friends volunteering to take over her patrol duties so that she could concentrate on the movie. Back with the villains, we saw more antics revolving around Regina being a little brat.
私が食べたいのはトウモロコシはトウモロコシでもこってり香ばしいバターコーンなの。
Oh come on, I prefer it on the cob. Half the fun is eating it like that.
Well, unfortunately, this child of the corn decided to find some fun elsewhere. Mistaking Weaver's performance as the evil queen as legit selfishness, Regina chose her as her first victim of the week. Obviously, under normal circumstances, Weaver couldn't have her selfishness extracted as she was too busy making a movie to even be selfish.
She would probably have much better luck with Tom Cruise.
However, this was of no concern to Regina as she had the ability to artificially darken a person's heart and force the creation of a Jikochu.
Ah, I see somebody graduated from the Yu-Gi-Oh! School of Assholes.
Speaking of which, hi Mirror Force! Glad to see you're getting even more honor and notoriety. With their usual finisher proving ineffective, they needed to upgrade to a new, stronger attack.
Here she comes to wreck the day.
The BBs of this franchise need more nerfing than an entire Smash Bros. Roster.
Oh well, at the very least we did get this awkward little wink out of Makoto. It's so perfectly in character with her, and just adorable. With that, Regina retreated after revealing her identity to the Precure. Thus, the episode ended with production on the movie wrapping up, and Makoto being given Weaver's script, which produced you-know-what. The following episode opened with a comedy skit between the villains.
あんたもね。くったらない。
To be fair, they were funnier than any of the previous guest comedians.
Still, Regina sought entertainment, so she went to Mana.
だから友達にしてあげる。
Translation? Let me join in on this harem.
And not so surprisingly, Mana accepted. However, Makoto, understandably, was against the idea of fraternizing with the daughter of the guy who destroyed her home.
レジーナと友達になれたらいいなって思ってる。
This is how you write a character who's a little too pure for her own good.
As I said before, Mana has a difficult time seeing the forest for the trees. Thus, while it might have been obvious to anyone else that Makoto wouldn't be able to accept this, Mana was too focused on trying to get along with everyone that she couldn't completely process the faults in her choices.
To me, stuff like this does prevent Mana from becoming a Mary Sue, especially when we do see the faults in her philosophy by the end of this episode.
Anyway, Regina ended up following Mana all day, trying to get her to play with her even though it was a school day.
ちょっと待って片付けるって何するつもり学校消すの
Okay, she might be a selfish little brat, but Regina and her reality warping powers are just plain hilarious.
Goes without saying, this is another Yoshimi Narita episode, so there's a lot of sharp humor here, as well as a ton of Yuri shipping. However, the stresses of maintaining a stable harem quickly got to Mana, especially when one of its members started being a little possessive.
そうだいらないものは消しちゃえばいいんだ
Jeez, where would you get an idea like that from? I'm ready for you anytime, you poor excuse for malware!
Yeah, unsurprisingly, the dark magical girl went full yandere and tried to eliminate the competition. And I gotta say, I just love how Regina twisted what she had done into being Mana's fault, and that the only way to stop it was by becoming her sole friend, aka possession. Mana of course refused, and together they recycled the Jikochu. Thus, the episode ended with her awkwardly making amends with Makoto, and Regina wondering what it means to be a true friend.
This was definitely another one of my early favorite episodes, but I think it was also an episode used often in the Mana is a Mary Sue argument, especially with scenes like this.
マナのせいじゃないマナの友達になったのはなりたいと思ったのは私なんだから
Now, I get why stuff like this can paint Mana as a Mary Sue, but it doesn't really bother me because of one important factor.
She contributed significantly to the plot.
The main conflict of this episode was between the Cures of the Heart and the Spade over whether or not they should befriend Regina. Both sides brought up valid arguments, and in the end, neither was shown as being more right than the other. Being kind to everyone is an essential part of the Precure's philosophy, but blindly trying to befriend everyone can leave them vulnerable. In the end, the two Precure were able to find a middle ground and exhibit some of the best aspects of their characters.
Now, compare this against a character whom I and many others consider to be an actual Mary Sue, and probably one of the worst things to ever come out of Digimon. Okay, second worst after Rapey Genai. Seriously, why do people like Try so much?
Yes, to me, Meiko Mochizuki is a prime example of a Mary Sue. She was beloved by all the Digidestined to the point that they never once blamed her for the many mistakes she made throughout Try, and yet she took up an inordinate amount of screen time in what was supposed to be an anniversary series celebrating the original Adventure Crew.
And yet, as bad as all of that was, I might have had an ounce of respect for this character if she at the very least contributed to the plot. Guess what she didn't do? You know, aside from develop an actual character.
Seriously, you could just write Meiko out of the story entirely and just have it be about the Adventure Crew dealing with the stray Meikumon. The events could play out almost the same, but they'd have more screen time for the characters people actually want to see when going to these movies.
Oh, but then I guess we miss out on ending the movies with shipping between her and Tai.
Say what you want about Mana, at least you can admit she was proactive and yet didn't steal that much screen time from her teammates during their focus episodes. At worst, you could say she took time as the one who dealt the finishing blow to the Jikochu, but that had more to do with how they wanted to advertise the toys.
Point is, while Mana is beloved by her teammates, it's not without good reason, and even then, they're not above questioning her choices from time to time.
The main problem with any sort of Mary Sue is when they stifle an interesting conflict by completely negating the arguments of the opposition, without at the very least providing a convincing counter-argument.
There is a little more I want to say, but let's continue with the review, and I'll bring it up as it comes along.
The search for the princess continued into the next episode with the Precure checking out an outdoor art museum. There, they met with Regina again, and her claims that she was turning over a new leaf.
Yeah, still a more convincing turn than anything that's on WWE these days.
Alright, to be fair, she was making an honest effort to befriend the Precure, though of course she was still focused on Mana. At the museum, Makoto found a statue that looked exactly like the princess. They also ran into Joe, who Makoto started to recognize as someone she had seen before, possibly back in Trump Kingdom. But of course, being Mimla in disguise, he ran off before they could get any additional exposition out of him. Looking closer at the statue, they saw something that appeared to be a royal crystal.
Well, I see someone mastered their Hamon.
Thankfully, the sculptor of the statue was very forgiving, mostly due to the fact that he didn't fully comprehend why he made the thing in the first place.
Maybe you were taken over by aliens from outer space.
Actually, I don't think we ever really do learn what possessed him to make the statue. My best guess is that the spirit of the princess was trying to provide a lead to the last royal crystal. And as the Precure were cleaning up the statue she broke, Regina was shocked to see someone literally cleaning up her mess. While she was used to people doing stuff for her because of who her daddy was, Regina was unfamiliar with the concept of unconditional kindness. Wanting to experience even more of this warm feeling, she declared, with complete honesty this time, that she wanted to become friends with all of the Precure.
I am so not looking forward to covering this arc's conclusion.
And as a result of all of this, the crystal Regina extracted from the statue, which was just a normal piece of glass, turned into the fourth royal crystal.
Which is interesting, because the common denominator for all of the crystals appearing up until this point was the fact that they were created from objects attained by the Precure, which makes you think that they're foreshadowing something with Regina. They are, just not something any of us actually wanted.
Anyway, seeing how shiny the crystal was, triggered her inner golem.
Again, still very heel turn than anything on Raw these days. Why did they have to turn Elias heel?
Using the sculptor as a catalyst, she created a Jikochu.
Well, I see someone's a fan of Biohunter Silva. Good taste.
Though he also seemed to take influence from one of his earlier brethren, as he also had petrification powers just like the traffic signal Jikochu. With it, he froze all of the Precure except for Mana. Regina bargained their freedom in exchange for the crystals. Mana of course refused and tried to get through to Regina, and it didn't work, and Mana was about to join her friends, until...
Merlin Clash changed to a saber? Is this a new welfare servant? Because I'd happily sell for an SR at this point.
Nah, but seriously, Joe was actually a knight from Trump Kingdom who told Mana she could free her friends from their petrified states by firing her arrow at them. And he knew this would work because, arrows of light and hope, I don't know. Anyway, they defeated the Jikochu, forcing Regina into retreat. Joe further revealed he was Maria Ange's fiancé and that his real name was Jonathan Klondike.
Oh great, now we have to play this clip.
What would you do for a Klondike bar?
Hope you're satisfied, dude.
Episode 18 further expanded on Mr. Ice Cream Bar's relationship with the princess, much to Makoto's discomfort.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was never that much of an Artria/Merlin shipper.
He also gave further exposition about the royal crystals, basically saying that by collecting all of these MacGuffins, they could summon forth an even bigger one. Again, JRPG 101 here, guys. And to find the final crystal, he was going to take them to a flower field similar to a spot he and the princess frequented. The next day, they started making their way to the field, eventually needing to transfer to an old-fashioned steam engine. Makoto throughout the trip was, unsurprisingly, not on the best of terms with her love rival.
It was only inevitable that one of these girls would become a corporate shill.
The train ended up getting pulled over after I tried to burn her weed, I'm guessing. This gave them an opportunity to give Joe a little more character development and make him a little less of a creep. This led into a pretty well done flashback that not only included some callbacks to all of the previous episodes in this arc, but also told the tragic tale of a knight who was unable to make it in time to rescue his princess and fiancé. Recognizing that they were two warriors in the same boat, Makoto seemed to accept Joe as an ally. Nice stuff. Back at the train, Regina created a Jikochu, this time from a legitimately selfish little brat who was trying to play with it.
Though to be fair, I have seen a whole team of train fanatics who are far less mature than this kid.
The Jikochu took the real train and started wreaking havoc. The Precure tried to stop it from ruining the fields.
Okay, I was joking earlier when I mentioned burning weed, but I am convinced this locomotive is on something.
And while I'll admit, Mana being the one who immediately jumped ahead and tried to stop the train by herself is a little Mary Sue-ish, at least the right girl saved the train. They defeated the Jikochu and were rewarded with the final royal crystal. Thus, episode 19 focused on them trying to take back Regina's red crystal. Wanting to try and resolve the conflict as peacefully as possible, Mana accepted when Regina wagered hers in a game. Thus, after making a pinky promise, they were warped into a game world by her Jikochu and...
Wait, the Precure were transported to a game world by the villains. Who wrote this episode? Really, Narita? You couldn't wait 2 years before you did your version of Deluxe 3 again?
Sure enough, it ended up playing out just like Smile 29, with the Precure being forced to play games, with the villains using dirty tactics, and then being forced to counter with some of their own. This included a game of bowling, with some very confusing rules, like seriously the Precure are allowed to use all 4 members of their team to knock down one supersized set of pins? The villains were just setting themselves up for defeat with that one.
Okay, episode, you gain a few points for that Gilgamesh quote.
Actually, the one saving grace that prevents this episode from being brought down by its redundancy are the villains, as after both teams scored a victory apiece, the tiebreaker was a game of dodgeball. The villains, due to their inherent selfish nature, ended up fighting amongst themselves.
Atsuko Tanaka is the true MVP of this show.
With the villains employing in on themselves, the game was called in favor of the Precure. Thus, in accordance with their promise, Regina was going to hand over the crystal.
Wait, she's not thinking of breaking a pinky promise, is she? Uh-oh, I'm heading for the hills!
Luckily, everyone was spared the wrath of an angry pony as they were all ejected from the game world after the Precure defeated the Jikochu that they were inside of. How exactly does that work? Is this like the paraboxes from that one episode of Futurama? Whatever, they defeated it, but as they were being released, Regina managed to snatch up the crystals. This resulted in them activating and flying off like a certain set of red starred orbs.
Gee, Shenron, way to keep on granting wishes.
This continued directly into episode 20 with the villains giving chase. Without the ability to fly, the Precure first didn't know how they would even go about locating the crystals. That is until a certain OP butler showed up.
現在クリスタルは北西の方角に。
セバスチャンさんって何者け
I would make an obvious reference here, but let's save that for episode 25.
With that, the Precure traveled to the mountains by helicopter.
I would just like to take a moment to remind everyone out there that this is a magical girl show.
Along the way, they stopped by a lodge where the owner gave them some not at all subtle foreshadowing.
あの山には昔から信じ合う仲間、つまりパーティーを奇跡の光が救うという伝説がある。
Thank you, sir, who's not even going to be the victim of the week. You made for such a fine plot device. Anyway, the Precure managed to reach the top of the mountain around the same time as the villains.
私が欲しいのはクリスタル。クリスタルよ
Crystals, Crash! Go back through one of those doors and bring me crystals!
The two sides fought, but ended up causing a cave-in, with Regina falling in along with Mana as she tried to rescue her. Inside the cave, they found both the crystals and the princess, and somewhere a certain Italian plumber is wishing his job could be this easy. Seeing the princess managed to snap Regina out of her crystal obsession, and she made up with Mana.
ジーナもパパがトランプ王国を元に戻してくれたら王女様もこれ以上戦ったりしないんじゃ
Yeah, Mana, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be as easy as finding a princess.
Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of the Precure trying to take the most peaceful route towards victory, but when you speak in broad terms like this, it comes off as more naive than anything else.
Again, I can understand how stuff like this can frustrate people towards Mana's character, but let's just hold on to those thoughts for now.
Anyway, that aside, this episode did actually have some great moments, including Regina breaking down after realizing she nearly ruined her friendship with Mana, and Makoto admitting that while she didn't trust Regina just yet, she was willing to accept her for Mana's sake. Good stuff. I'm not so much a fan of the Monster of the Week coming out of nowhere and breaking the flow of the episode just because they needed one. Seriously, you could just cut the fight out and nothing's really lost. But whatever, the villains managed to take the frozen princess, and Regina, when did they snatch her up? Episode 21 opened with the villains celebrating their victory.
すぐにお別れなんて僕の手柄だよなこれからはベールもマーモも僕の部下だ
This show has more star screams than I do.
Meanwhile, our protagonists began thinking about their next course of action, with even Joe showing some actual character for once. Only took him about 1/3 into the series. The crystals managed to open a portal to Trump Kingdom for them. In said kingdom, the villains presented their king with the frozen princess.
Deneb is not happy that he's been so underused in the crossover movies.
Seriously though, I love Hochu Otsuka's performance as King Selfishness. He comes off as legitimately intimidating while also delivering just the right amount of evil ham. He was unable to actually do anything to the princess, but regardless, he was going to proceed with his plans of invading the human world next, much to the horror of Regina, who tried to convince him not to. And Daddy didn't take his daughter's rebellious phase all that well. The Precure and Joe, god that's awkward to say, soon arrived in Trump Kingdom. Since they were heading into enemy territory, the villains already had an army of Jikochu on standby. However, they managed to create an opening for Maya to go rescue Regina. She found her, but...
He activated my trap!
The two found themselves in a recreation of Yunosuke Akutogawa's classic short story, The Spire's Thread. Basically, it was the story of a sinner in hell who was given an opportunity to escape by climbing the titular string. He almost made it out until a bunch of other sinners tried to climb the same thread and it began to break. He then selfishly declared that the thread belonged only to him, and in a bit of insta-karma, the thread snapped, sending him right back down to hell. Obviously, Mana wasn't going to make the same mistake as the sinner, even though this thread was definitely going to snap with the two of them on it. With that in mind, Regina performed her first true act of selflessness.
Nanda?
You, Mana, Aida are just as much worthy of this drill as Simon was.
And is somehow reawaken Regina's powers, even though I'm pretty sure they're based around selfishness, but whatever, let's not ruin the moment. She helped take out Jirai-Gumo, and after stealing back the princess, they were all about to escape when the king started going into full Arash mode.
Can you tell that I'm really into FGO?
They managed to escape, but not without some doubts within the heart of a confused little girl. In the next episode, they safely warp back to Joe's shop, wanting to try and free the princess from her icy prison. They tried an old cliche.
何も起こらないけど。さすがにおとぎ話みたいにはいかないか。
Somewhere Miyuki Hoshizora is crying and she doesn't know why.
For the time being, he decided to find a hiding place for the princess while the Precure got to know Regina better. Mana had her stay over at her place, and everything was going great. They ate together, they slept together, and they were even going to the beach together. Yep, everything was peachy keen, and yeah, how much longer till everything goes south? Figured. The selfish agents attack, separating Regina from her new friends, and giving her some private time to mend some fences with her father, who as a welcome back gift, had some new dark energy for his daughter.
お前の心には愛が芽生えてしまった。だから心が痛み。
Now, for my money, this scene actually kind of takes advantage of Ma's somewhat Mary Sue aspects.
There's really no arguing that Mana has more than a bit of an overbearing personality. Sure, she has the best of intentions, and that should be commended, but at the same time, that does sometimes result in people either idolizing her like June from episode 12, or relying on her like Regina to unhealthy degrees.
I think the King of Conquerors put it best.
The righteousness and ideals you embraced in life may have indeed saved your nation and her people once.
By trying to be superhuman even outside of her Precure persona, Mana was essentially setting up the downfall of characters like June and Regina.
Surely you must know what became of those who were saved by you, but then were left to fend for themselves.
As once they realized they could never reach or remain on the same level as Mana, that admiration they once held for her would soon turn to hatred.
You may indeed have saved them, but you never led them.
In a well-done, tragic moment for the series, not only did Regina return to the dark side, but Mana was now forced to face the fact that her excessive pushing of her ideals was now driving this girl away.
You went on to follow your own pretty little ideals to the end.
People, and children especially, have to choose for themselves who they want to stand by. And yet here, the Cure of Love was actively trying to separate a daughter from her father. Evil or not, it wasn't her call to make.
You spent your life enraptured by a false idol of a humble king who always serves others. You're just a little girl.
Mana Aida embodied both the greatness of the Precure's philosophy, but also all of its flaws.
All that said, this is an excellent setup for what the previous episodes have been building up to.
Yeah, while Smile lacked any real 6th Ranger, well, Candy's more of an 11th Hour Ranger, they announced in previous episodes that new Cure Dawned in Red was coming.
And just based off the myriad of hints we've gotten so far, I have no doubt it's gonna be...
You blew it!
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you for your pleasure, Cure Ace, the rage quit moment for many viewers of the show.
And okay, just so that we're clear, I still ultimately like this series and even this character as she did eventually find her place in this team, but oh boy was this a rocky start.
Seriously, writers, you already had a great story going with Regina, a girl who would defy everything, including her own father. As of the time of this recording, we haven't gotten this juicy of a setup for any face-turned 6th Ranger, and no, I don't count Toa as she was never really Despirit's daughter.
Why give us a swerve that's the equivalent of this?
It's me, Austin! Oh, son of a bitch!
If you didn't get that reference, good, I envy you.
Anyway, the new Cure made quick work of Regina in an admittedly impressive debut fight. Yeah, it was a bit of a curb stomp, but as I just said, this is the equivalent of Attitude Era rank, so par for the course really. Defeated and severely injured, Regina and her agents retreated.
Regina! Precure! 絶対許さない!
Again, this is good drama, just as long as you ignore the elephant in the room. And I just got rid of one too.
And the negative first impressions only continued as Cure Ace took possession of Ma's transformation trinket. Now granted, she was in a blue screen state where she probably would have been more of a hindrance in battle than anything else, but come on girl, you don't have to rub more salt in the wound than necessary. Back in Trump Kingdom, the villains report their latest defeat to their king, and were soon greeted by some new baddies. Leva, who I think is just another incarnation of Brajira, and Gula, who, jeez dude, who does your dental? But yeah, obviously these guys were going to be replacing Regina as the main villains of the next arc. Meanwhile, Mana was understandably concerned about Regina, even remembering the good times in a very touching little moment.
Mostly touching little moment. TPO, guys. TPO.
With her motherly figure in such a distraught state, I decided to help break her out of her stupor by...
あなたの妹なんだから、ここにいるのは当たり前でしょ？
私の妹だって思い込まされたんじゃないかな。
manipulating the memories of her loved ones?
We really need to have a little chit chat about those powers of yours later.
Anyway, morally questionable acts aside, I did manage to cheer Mana up and get her to go outside. While chasing a mirage of Regina, she ran into this girl, Aguri Madoka.
It's her surname!
What I will say is that I am surprised that Kugyu can actually play a relatively subdued tsundere, at least compared to her other roles. Anyway, she dropped some not-so-subtle hints as to who she really was. Elsewhere, Makoto was approached by a couple of her fans while she was volunteering at a flea market. And after they were denied autographs from her, you can guess what happened next.
I'm starting to think the show has something against idol fanboys.
Riva and Gula made some strong first impressions, fighting alongside the monsters and successfully ambushing 3 of the Precure. Hearing her friends in trouble, Mana did something I wish a lot more heroes would do these days.
でも、何が一番とかじゃなくて、私はみんなの笑顔を守りたい。
She arrived and used a foolproof method to save her friends.
ちょっと待った！
Stop! Hammer time.
Can't touch this.
I joked, but Mana's methods were almost just as silly. Granted, they worked and...
やった！マナちゃんさすがです！マナ！
Okay, exchanges like this are a little Mary Sue-ish, as her friends are being turned into glorified cheerleaders in this situation.
It's a little forgivable here, since this is a Mana episode, and all of these girls are about to get their own focus episodes. But I will admit, dubbing them out like this is a little much.
Still, at least it did lead to a pretty cool fight sequence, as unsurprisingly, Aguri was Cure Ace. And the pair of hearts proved to be more than a match for our comrades. The team warmly welcomed their leader back into the fold, and Aguri didn't join them because, again, Yamaguchi worked on Time Ranger. Episode 24 was the aforementioned Makoto-focused episode, with her starting to realize how much of a joke character she had become. Nah, but seriously, she was disappointed that all of her work as an idol didn't really contribute to the princess's rescue. This was on top of her being confused by the very existence of Curates, who they ended up meeting the next day during tea time.
Because of course a Kugyu character would have a sweet tooth.
Also, I'll say right now, this is my absolute favorite screenshot from this show. However, while Aguri was blown away by Sebastian's culinary skills, she was less impressed by Makoto's recent performances both as an idol and as a Precure.
So yeah, while I'm still kind of annoyed by the cheerleading from the last episode, at least it served a purpose in this and the next couple of episodes.
Rocked by the words of the Kugyu, Makoto decided she was going to quit singing. The next day, her friends tried to convince her not to by using some very questionable methods.
Worst Shizuma cosplay ever.
Also, I love the little detail here of Davy smiling after seeing Alice's extravagant attempts at getting Makoto to sing. But yeah, Makoto is pretty dead set on retiring her idol career. She did have one last concert that she was contractually obligated to fulfill, but even that she was hesitant of. Her tardiness ended up attracting the attention of a reporter waiting outside of her dressing room.
A paparazzi who actually respects privacy. Well, there goes my suspension of disbelief.
This, of course, resulted in the creation of a Chikochu that more properly represented what reporters like.
Anyone else surprised that Rika didn't barge in at this exact moment?
Noticing that her friends were in trouble, Makoto tried to run in to make the save, but first ran into the MacGuffin baby. She connected her with the princess, who assured her that her songs did reach her. Kind of a nice scene, but I do think it's made a little superfluous by the preceding one.
You and the main cast of Star Twinkle.
But yeah, as I was saying, the princess scene feels like needless filler if Makoto was just going to come to the conclusion that she enjoyed singing for others. Heck, by removing the scene, it gives a little more agency to Makoto, allowing her to find her resolve on her own.
I think it's little details like this that do more damage to Makoto's character than just turning her into a joke.
Regardless, this earned praise from Aguri, whom I'm guessing got a ride from I, because otherwise, how the heck did she get on top of the stadium? And thankfully, this show gets around the trope of the Sixth Ranger getting in all of the finishers after their debut, as outside of the Red Rouge attack, Aguri's other colors, which just so happened to match with the focus cure of the episode, act as stunners. Thus, for once, Makoto's Sparkle Sword actually ended a fight.
Take note, all series that preceded this one. Huh.
Anyway, the day was won, and Makoto decided to continue to entertain the masses, who would likely become targets of the selfish agents in the near future if patterns follow. For the final episode we'll cover for today, we'll take a look at an Alice and Sebastian-focused episode. Yep, the OP Butler got his own Limelight episode, and boy did this become a famous episode for more esoteric reasons.
Precure, Labyrinth.
To be fair, this isn't the first time Alfred's put on the Batsuit.
But yeah, you could argue that Sebastian beat both Waffles and Infinity as the first male Precure. I personally wouldn't, since he's using more of a bootleg device to transform.
And as much as I like Sebastian, the minute we start allowing bootlegs into the franchise is the minute I leave YouTube for good.
Also, while I'm all for giving Sebastian character development, can we not do the same thing we've been doing with Makoto? Anyway, the reason for the spandex was because his mistress was faltering as the tank of her team. Understandable, it's not an easy position in any team, and Alice just doesn't have the time to build up the necessary physical constitution required due to her being a young entrepreneur.
And yet, pretty much none of this is going to be brought up in the episode.
Nope, the actual lesson of the episode was apparently that Alice needed to learn how to protect those who protect her, which I'm pretty sure she was already doing that, so was the lesson meant that she needed to be more assertive?
You know, the more I think about it, yellow might have been the most appropriate color for this character.
I didn't learn anything.
Narratively, this episode is just not that good, as while it really should be more of an Alice-focused episode, as she does need the development, its focus is divided between her, Sebastian, and a third character.
And yet, it does fall into guilty pleasure territory because of that third character.
As while Sebastian was fortifying his stamina to better withstand the feedback of his device, Mamoru accidentally got mixed up with her stuff, and thus... I won't even ask how or why it formed a completely different outfit for her, because this is just too goofy to take seriously. Heck, we even cut over to easily the most pathetic Jikotu ever.
Millennials in a nutshell.
Mamo took advantage of her kind of Precure persona to pretend to be a superheroine, even though she caused most of the incidents she was involved in. This ultimately led to a confrontation between her and Alice after she heard what she had done to her servant. She learned her confusing lesson of the day and defeated Mamon again thanks to the power of Mirror Force.
There's just something magical about hearing the voice of Major Kusanagi sound like a complete ninny.
So yeah, while I can't call this a good episode in any sense, I also won't deny that I did find it very entertaining, and at the very least, it ended on a sweet note between Alice and Sebastian.
And you know, the more I think about it, maybe this was actually the best episode to end this part on because it best exemplified what this show is all about. Really entertaining at times, and even has some really touching moments, but at the same time, you can't really just ignore some of the narrative flaws that are there.
Though first, let's talk about some of the positives of the plot here. Yes, there was some padding in episodes, and individually some episodes were better than others, but otherwise, stuff was always happening. They were both collecting the royal crystals, as well as getting character development for each of the cures. Alice managed to come to terms with her violent outbursts, Rika managed to discover a new hobby, and Makoto learned how to rely more on her teammates. We'll save talking about Mana for a little later, but first, let's talk about the conclusion to the Crystal Gathering arc, and the fact that its payoff was more than a little uneven. Putting aside the Cure A stuff for a minute, did you notice how the royal crystals were just quietly removed from the conversation? Well, that's because they were reduced down to just being buttons on her toy, or in this case, makeup, I guess. Either way, it severely diminished the journey that these girls went through to get these things. These powerful MacGuffins just became a small part of the transformation trinket for the Sixth Ranger, which understandably added to people's frustrations over this needless swerve right out of Vince Russo's playbook. For me, Regina was a perfect candidate for a Sixth Ranger. As I said, she had a strong connection with the big bad of the series, and was going through some great character development, including an awesome heroic near sacrifice. So to see all of that basically amounting to just being fuel for one of Toei's biggest troll moves ever is infuriating, and yes, they've confirmed in interviews that they totally knew that they were trolling us. Now all that said, there was a silver lining to this mishandled arc, namely the character everyone was complaining about. Again, to me, the thing that prevents Mana from becoming a Mary Sue is the fact that she was called out when she made mistakes and was forced to come to terms with them. Even if she was being manipulated by her father, Regina did have a point when she said that her friendship with the Precure was causing her pain. For as much as Mana preaches about how she wants to help others, her idealism was putting needless pressure on this young girl who still didn't know how to make decisions for herself. And when you start forcing ideals on others, the divide between a hero and a villain becomes a lot thinner. Mana likely realized this when she lowered her bow, and we need to carry it with her in the oncoming episodes. So yeah, while I'm still iffy on Regina not becoming Cure Ace, this scene did do a good job at emphasizing Mana's failings and how she does still need to grow. And thankfully, she wouldn't be the only one who would be brought down the peg soon enough.
I'll cover my thoughts regarding the Cure Ace arc as a whole next time, but for now, I think I'm going to take a little break to tackle some side projects. Be sure to check out my weekly Star Twinkle reviews to keep updated. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and might need to cover this next time.